This is Zach Shepard, and I'm going to talk about second language acquisition theory. The three primary questions that researchers of second language acquisition theory attempt to answer are: what does the second language learner learn? How is the content of what the learner knows learned? And why do some learners achieve greater success than others? In attempting to answer these questions, research is conducted from the basis of one of three primary disciplines: linguistic, psychological, social. These disciplines from which language acquisition is studied have led to independent frameworks or perspectives that attempt to explain how languages are learned. A major component in language development is the interlanguage of language learners. This is a system of language that exists apart from the learner's target language. These language systems are dynamic and systematic. They are the domain on which all second language acquisition studies and research are conducted. Within this interlanguage, there are observable developmental sequences in second language learners. These developmental sequences can be mapped for individual language based on the interlanguage of second language learners. In some cases, these sequences closely align with the developmental sequences of the interlanguage of first language learners of the same language. Noam Chomsky has had one of the largest influences on the linguistic approach to second language acquisition research. He introduced the idea that humans are born with an innate capacity to learn human languages. He proposed the idea and existence of a universal grammar that is a theoretical underlying platform on which all human languages are constructed. Within the context of second language acquisition, innatist theorists debate about the availability to access of knowledge of universal grammar after the critical period. The existence of universal grammar and the access to it can be argued to account for the first language L1 acquisition during the critical period. In the psychological branch of second language acquisition, which introduced the behaviorist perspective, researchers take into account different psychological characteristics that are potential influential factors in second language acquisition. Some of these factors include age, gender, motivation, personality, learning strategies. And contrary to common or popular stereotype, there is not a significant difference that can be measured in the language learning ability or abilities between men and women. Also, contrary to common or popular stereotype, there is a greater initial rate of learning that can be measured in older learners when compared to younger learners. From the sociological approach to second language acquisition theory, there are microsocial and macrosocial factors to consider in the influences on second language acquisition. Microsocial factors that influence second language acquisition define the different types of interaction that learners encounter in the development of their interlanguage. Some questions that researchers attempt to answer in regards to microsocial factors are: is genuine interaction a necessity for interlanguage development? Is comprehensible input sufficient in itself to account for second language acquisition? And is computer-mediated communication sufficient for interlanguage development? Also, within sociological framework of second language acquisition, there are macrosocial factors that must be considered. These macrosocial factors include such things as the global and national status of the learner's first language and second language, political and social boundaries and identities, and institutional forces. Learner environments can be categorized primarily into natural and instructional. In a natural learning environment, learners are not exposed to structure of a language developmentally. Learners are exposed to the target language for many hours of the day, and learners are forced to speak even with limited abilities in the target language. In an instructional learning environment, learners are introduced to linguistic items systematically and progressively. The teacher is generally the only native speaker of the target language with whom the learner may come in contact, and the learner is exposed to the target language only a few hours a week. There are different types of corrective feedback that can be offered to language learners. The effectiveness and impact of these types of corrective feedback differ based on the learning methods to which the learner is accustomed, the instructional setting in which the learning is taking place, the method of production in which the corrective feedback is offered. There are observation schemes that have been developed to measure the effectiveness and impact of teaching practices and strategies in the second language classroom. One such observation scheme is the communicative-oriented language scheme. This observation scheme consists of two parts, describing the teaching practices and describing the aspects of the language produced in the classroom. An alternative to observation schemes are ethnographic observations of classroom practices. These observations extend beyond observations of practices in language production in the classroom to include ethnographic characteristics of learners and the environment. The resulting studies are more qualitative than the designed observation schemes. There are 6 discrete proposals for teaching second languages. Get it right from the beginning. Number 2, just listen and read. Number 3, let's talk. Number 4, get 2 for 1. Number 5, teach what is teachable. And number 6, get it right in the end. In the get it right from the beginning proposal, linguistic forms are isolated and practiced to achieve mastery before introducing the next linguistic form. Often learners are assigned to translate text from their target language into their native language. There's also use of audio-lingual repetition practices. Subscribers to the Just Listen and Read proposal believe that comprehensible input is sufficient for acquisition. Production skills are not practiced in this theory of teaching. Students only use their receptive skills to acquire the target language. That is shown to be a very effective teaching theory. Subscribers to the Get 2 for 1 proposal believe in integrating second language instruction within academic content teaching. This theory does not center on form-focused instruction, but rather on academic content with the idea that second language acquisition will occur naturally. And that is my Pecha Kucha for second